Welcome to Wake Up and Live with Christopher Flake. Tune in each day as Pastor Chris shares a short inspirational message of encouragement on a variety of topics. So wake up and live empowered, blessed, loved. Now let's listen to today's message.
Good morning. Thank you for tuning in again today as it's Friday as we begin to head into our weekend. You know, we've just been talking about this technology and social media the past few episodes and, you know, really seeing, there's awesome and great things for it, but there's also the things that really take away from our life when we're so caught up in this technology and social media. And so today I just kind of want to end this up really asking you some questions. So, if you really want to change with the way that you relate to technology and social media, then I encourage you to consider this story of someone who asked Jesus for help when he needed to be healed. You'll find this story in John 5, 1 through 15, and we're told how one day Jesus approached the pool of Bethesda in Jerusalem, a place where all the sick people, they would gather. And there were people who were blind, likely lame people, and possibly someone who was even paralyzed. These people gathered and waited patiently because they believed that an angel would stir up the water and causing bubbles to rise. And like people for centuries before in sins and other places, the people of Jerusalem believed that bubbly waters had these healing powers, and needy people embraced the legend and that first person in the water would be healed. And so this one guy stood out as Jesus approached the crowd of hurting people, and this man who had been an invalid for 38 years. 38. And then we can only imagine how this guy's life was. For 38 years, he couldn't work. For 38 years, he couldn't walk. For 38 years, he was dependent on other people to do everything we do ourselves and take for granted. For 38 years of suffering and too difficult to endure, these 38 years must have really seemed like an eternity to him. This reality makes Jesus' question to this man stand out even more. When Jesus saw him lying there and he learned that he had been in this condition for a very long time, he asked him this question: "Do you want to get well?" What kind of question is that to ask a guy who's been unable to walk for about 4 decades? This question seems insensitive, almost insulting. It's like asking a broke guy if he wants to win the lottery. It's really like asking a hungry guy if you want a year's worth of free food at his favorite restaurant. It's like asking anybody, and I don't want to really make too much of it, but why would Jesus ask such an obvious question? Because Jesus needed to know if the guy really wanted to change. Because Jesus knew this guy needed to know for himself if he really wanted to change. Did he really want to be well? You might have been listening to this podcast on this series and you have this love-hate relationship with technology. You love it for all the obvious reasons, but you hate it that it consumed you and that your default action in any slow moment of life is start going click, swipe, swipe, click, click. All of us have been there. I've been there. And maybe you've had a problem with technology for a while. It's distracting you from really those who are in front of you. People who you care about often complain because you are staring at your phone and not listening to them. You can't go an hour without checking your device. If you don't have it with you at all times, you feel lost and vulnerable and anxious. Maybe your identity is wrapped up in likes and comments and retweets. If you gain a follower, you're happy, but if you lose one, you get upset. You shouldn't be like this, but you are. And when you're honest with it, it bothers you. If you've been really chained to this addiction for a while, and you might recognize 3 major challenges that make it really hard to break free. The first one is the longer the problem persists, the more discouraged you become. For 38 years, nothing changed for the poor guy at the pool of Bethesda. Similarly, for those who know how long your device may have been keeping you from being fully alive in Christ. Maybe you've tried to manage it, but you just can't. So you're so tempted to resign yourself to it, saying, hey, everyone else is tied to theirs, and so this is just the way life is going to be. I wish I could change, but we all know it's just never going to happen. The second thing is the longer the problem persists, the more excuses you make. When Jesus asked the man if he wanted to be well, the man replied, "Sir, I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred." He explained to Jesus that because he had no help, everyone else raced by him, leaving him stranded without any hope. Maybe this describes where you are today. You want to change and you secretly hope that somehow God will help you. But you also know it's easier to just wait by the pool and make excuses than to crawl over and dive in. You may have been saying something like, "I can't live without my phone for an hour, much less a whole day. And it's just the way life today is. Staying current is too important to me." Or, "Besides, I tried to unplug once, but it's just not worth it." But the third thing is, the longer the problem persists, the more you learn to compensate. Just like the functional alcoholic who managed to perform well on their job while being wrecking ball at home, you may be able to get around with your techno dysfunction. You keep passing your classes, you keep getting your job done, all by all, you keep current on what's happening in other people's lives, and still you manage to make time for the perfect selfie Sunday pic, right? But your life is full of things that aren't satisfying you. You know there has to be more. You long for it. You don't know where to find it. So here's the bottom line. You cannot change what you are willing to tolerate. If you're just sort of or don't like it, or the problem won't go away, or not ever if you're willing to put up with it, things will never be different. You have to get to the point where you're no longer afraid what you might miss out on. You have to refuse to miss out on what and who is who is right in front of you. And maybe you can sense the Spirit of God posing Jesus' question to you. Do you want to be well? Do you really? Do you want to enjoy the blessings of technology without being a slave to it? Are you willing to do whatever it takes to put God first in your life? If you are, then something really must change. Because really, instead of believing that God can do anything, many surrender to what they see. They accept what is instead of what could be. Maybe you become comfortable with your addiction to technology. You've learned to rationalize it, to explain it away. You tell yourself it's really not that big of a deal. Maybe everyone you know is a lot like you, so it couldn't be really that bad, could it? Perhaps the familiar, what you know and accept, is the greatest obstacle to your faith. Faith is what could be. Faith is what God calls you to be. The invalid could have argued, "I've never been able to walk. I've always been dependent on others. No one will ever help me." You might have had your excuses. I've got to be on my phone 24/7. If I'm not, how will they reach me? I have to stay in touch with what's going on. I can't do my job without my phone. If the familiar is the greatest obstacle to faith, then it takes faith to step away from the familiar. Maybe that's why Jesus asked the invalid, "Do you want to be well?" Maybe that's why you can sense his Spirit asking you the same question. Do you want to enjoy the benefits of technology without being ensnared by the curses? Do you really want to change? Do you really want to be well? Because you can't help someone who needs help. You can only help someone who wants help. Do you want to be free? You have to want it, really want it. Healing will not begin until your desire is greater than your disability. And that's with anything that holds us back. Our desire has to be greater than our disabilities. When you finally realize that you want to be well more than you want to be wired, then you've opened the door for God to work in your life. If you're tired of surfing, trying to fill a hole in your heart that only Jesus can fill, then it's time for healing. If you're sick to being slave of the latest operating system or having Wi-Fi connection at a restaurant and you're ready to do something about it, then you're taking the first steps. Addictions are rarely easy to overcome, but God will start the healing process if you let Him, if you're willing to rely on His power to do what no one else or you yourself cannot do. That's when it begins. That's when it starts. It's time to stop making excuses and getting well. When He looked at the crippled man, Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your mat and walk." At once, the man was cured. He picked up his mat and he walked. I mean, look at that story. Really read it in John 5, 8 through 9. I mean, Jesus didn't heal the man a month later. It happened immediately. In the same way, when you surrender this challenge to Jesus, he can do more in that moment than you can ever even imagine. You might not feel any different, and that change might not happen all at once, but Jesus' power will be working in you. Jesus told the invalid to get up and start walking. I mean, that's a pretty hefty assignment for a guy who had most likely had never walked in his life. And Jesus told him he could do what everyone else would have considered impossible. Notice that the guy didn't even ask Jesus to heal him. Jesus just did it because he's Jesus. When you get close to Jesus, he will do things you don't even ask him to do. He's just that good. Jesus essentially said, I don't want to hear your excuses. I want to see your faith. And there you have it. Maybe that's exactly what he's saying to you right now through this message. If you have listened so far, and I'm guessing something is hitting close to home maybe to you, and right now Jesus may be saying to you, I don't want to hear your excuses. I want you to believe that I have something even better, something richer for you, something that will satisfy your longing that nothing else could quench. And I don't know what this will look like in your life, but if you're serious about getting well, God will show you. You might take a 3-day break from technology to see if you can leave it alone, or you might break away from it for 30 days or a deeper detox. If technology and social media has become an idol for you, God might lead you to close some of those accounts, delete some of those apps, or install some filters so before you can just go on with life. And I don't know what form breaking this idol will take for you. You are not what you tweet. Your self-worth is not based on your likes of others, but on the love of God. And that's with anything. We're talking social media and technology, but this principle applies to all the things in our life that hold us back. When the idol is broken, you will not be overcome by comparisons like you've never been before. And when Christ becomes all you have, you will realize that Christ is really all you need. You won't be afraid of what you're missing out on, or the screen of your life, or for anything that matters. You will live an unfiltered life, removing the veil and sharing your heart with intimately. And you will care about people, and you won't simply like post. You will love people deeply from your heart. And when you occasionally or often unplug, you will find true rest from your just that soul just inside you so deep. When you make this pleasant boundaries, you will be making wise choices to keep your eyes, your mind, and your heart pure. You will not be putting anything ahead of God. When others are tempted to tear people down, you will break free from the crowd, and you will follow God, who has called you to build others up. So today, I pray that you will just wake up and live empowered and blessed by God. Don't allow the technologies and the social media of our days keep you from the blessings that God has for you. Yes, those things are just awesome. We know that. But if they've got a hold on our lives and they're changing the way that we love other people, or they're changing the way that we see ourselves, then it's just not good. Let's break free. My question today, do you want to be well? God bless. We'll see you again. Remember, everything that you do today, God could use as a miracle for tomorrow. God bless you. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening. Join us again tomorrow for another inspiring message. Remember to also listen to Sunday morning's sermon series on the seasons of life. Also check out all Pastor Chris's messages at wakeupandlive.life.